Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens for your Sunderland versus Leeds United closing whistle. Now, of course, we talked in the match reaction about what a fantastic game this was for Leeds United in terms of performance level, and the point obviously being a massively important point, something that I think we wouldn't have picked up. But in this show, obviously, we talk in terms of different situations in a bit more detail. We'll also get into the context of what that means for Leeds United, with the context of West Ham obviously losing, Leeds United now being 7 points clear, and now looking in a decent place. Leeds United on 20 points now from the first 18 games. And that's all good. And that sounds good. And it is good. But the fundamental is, the main thing is that Leeds United are 7 points above the bottom three. That is the main concern. Yes, the points are important. And yes, we're trying to sort of get this goal of probably 40 points for the season. And we maybe need 5-6 more wins to get that. But it's all about Leeds United sort of, as I said, being above the bottom three. That is fundamentally where it is. If West Ham get no more points for the rest of the season, Burnley get no more points, and Wolves get no more points. Yes, I don't want Leeds to lose every single game for the rest of the season, but that will be job completed. And I guess that is the point. But what I will say is, look, I'm really pleased at this moment, and I am starting to believe that Leeds United can do this. I really am. It's not just the results. We're obviously unbeaten in 5 now, which is fantastic. But I'm starting to believe, because I think I'm seeing Leeds United compete in different ways today. I've seen Leeds United in since the Chelsea game, change this 5-back system and playing a style of sort of long ball, going long, 5 at the back, solid defensively, 30% possession performances. And in the Liverpool game, we started to see Leeds United in the 4-3-3 and playing on the front foot and playing on top. But especially today, for the first time in a long, long time, I actually saw Leeds United dominate a game, and dominate a game with possession, which is something that we haven't seen this Leeds United team do for a long time. And I think what's amazing at this moment in time with Leeds is that I think we've managed to get through the sort of the lack of confidence. And I think now, with this more confident Leeds United team, you're seeing us be able to adapt into different styles in game. And it's as I said, it's working really well for Leeds United, and it's allowing us different styles. Because as I said, we know Leeds United now, since the Chelsea game, have been able to set in a 5-3-2, soak it up, play 2 big men up front, hit long balls, win long score from long throws, score from set pieces. We know Leeds United can do that. But what was really exciting, and I think massively adds a sort of arrow to our bow, is the ability now to change this 4-3-3 system and go back to something that we're trying at the start of the season but wasn't working as much, but actually play it in a much better way, and play it and dominate Sunderland. Like, as I said, the fantastic thing today is we dominated a game in 6 for possession. And I think when we're looking at stylistically where potentially Daniel Farke wants to take this Leeds United team at some point, I do think today is more of a Daniel Farke-like performance. He'll love that goal that we scored today, that the Calvert-Lewin goal that we scored today. He'll love the way that we dominated possession and we were sort of the number 1 team pushing the game in that second half. That is the sort of football Daniel Farke wants to play for me. That's the sort of football we saw in the Championship, and that is the sort of football I think he wanted to start playing in the Premier League. And we saw it try to work at Forest away, it didn't work. We tried to play it at Brighton away. It didn't work. But I think what's exciting at the moment is we've played that style today, and we have sort of got something. But as I said, important that we keep our feet on the ground still. This job isn't over yet. We've still got a long way to go. And we know things, especially with the games that West Ham have got coming up. They've obviously got Brighton at home. They've got Wolves away. Forest at home. I think they've got Spurs away. And Sunderland at home. Sort of 5 really good games coming up for West Ham, and things can change quickly. I mean, it was only 5 games ago for Leeds United that we were in the dumps, and 5 games later it feels like we can now play a 4-3-3 system really well. Feels like we can sort of play a defensive sort of 5-3-2 approach really well as well. And as I said, that is so as I said, things can change fundamentally quickly, but 7 points is a lot. It is a lot, because fundamentally, as we talked about, West Ham have only won 3 games all season. So to win maybe 3 of the next 5, is that something that's totally plausible? Yes, I think they could. But is that something we're expecting probably at this moment? Probably not. But I still do worry when we talk about the West Ham about the level of their team. I think they've still got players, the likes of Bowens, the likes of Pakatars, the likes of Somervilles, Wilsons, all these players that they've got in their arsenal. I still think they've got, if they could get going and get on a run, I think they could cause a lot of teams problems, but they're just not showing that at this moment, and I think that's obviously a huge positive. But as I said, what else have we got? But as I said, when we're talking about sort of this tactical flexibility, because I think that's important for what we've seen from Leeds United today. I think it's now important though that the 4-3-3 just doesn't become just our system now, if that makes sense. So as I said, 4-3-3 has worked today, but that doesn't mean I want to go to Anfield and play 4-3-3. That doesn't want to mean I want to go to Newcastle in a few weeks' time and play 4-3-3. We've got to now understand that we've got different ways of playing in our sort of stock and what we can do in our sort of wardrobe. We've got different outfits to wear as such, if you want to say that analogy. But we need to pick the outfit for the occasion. I'm not going to a black tie event in tracky bottoms. Let's be honest. I'm not going to the gym in a black tie. So you've got to match the situation. I think that's what Leeds United have got to do. So when we go to Anfield, I don't want to see really the performance that I saw against Sunderland in the characteristics of the way we're trying to win the game. I want to see Leeds United go back to a more maybe Nemetra and Calvert-Lewin up front if we can do. Ideally a 5-back system. Obviously we're going to have to talk about the Rodon injury because I think that's going to cause us a huge problem in that sense. But I would like to go back to that performance because I think for that particular game, that's the way we need to play in that game. So as I said, now you've got to look at it and you've just got to go, what's nice is we've got different styles and we can do different things, but we have to now, as I said, adapt game by game and pick scenarios, which is what I've been calling for, by the way. You guys know when we were on about the manager losing his job, maybe sort of 3 months, no, not 3 months ago, maybe about a few months ago now, before that Chelsea game, one of the main things I wanted in a new manager was to have different styles and to play a different system week in, week out to get the best out of that individual match. And Farke said, and I've said this a few weeks ago as well, has started to do that with the way he's playing. And we've added different styles to our boat. And as I said, now we've got these new styles. We've got to now use them. And as I said, play certain styles in certain games when it suits Leeds United. If we're playing Wolves at home, I want Leeds United to be on the front foot in a 4-3-3 and go for it. If we're playing Anfield away, I want Leeds United to go back to that 5-3-2 system that worked well against Chelsea and play that sort of approach. And that is what Leeds United we've got to see now. Evening, Scott, matching together. Evening to you too, Jack. Nice seeing the chat. Scooby says, who comes in for Rodon? Well, that's the question, because I think the question now going forward will be obviously the Liverpool game. That's the game coming up. And that's going to be tricky today to sort of think about where we go with that, I think. Because for me, I think the only obvious replacement we've got in the squad is probably Bornau. I think obviously Justin's played in the back three before potentially, so you could do that. But I do think that there is a situation for me where the only one really that could go, as I said, go into the back three is Bornau, but for whatever reason, he just doesn't fancy Bornau, does he? And I know a lot of people have sort of slagged Bornau off and said he's rubbish and because of the Sheffield Wednesday game. You know, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but you guys know that I don't think the Wednesday game had any bearing on Leeds United players because it was a completely different match and lineup and the way we played to any game we're going to see in the Premier League. So as I said, he was bad in that game, but I don't think that's a replica for him being that bad at Anfield away where we're going to play with 30% of the ball potentially. But as I said, now for me, as I said, we've got to try adapt game by game. But the question is, as I said, how we're going to do that without a Joe Rodon, because Joe Rodon doesn't really, without him in the team, it's not an obvious back three then, is it? Because who'd you go to get that? Richard says, do you think we should try buy a centre-back in January? I do, mate. And I actually think, obviously, we've been looking at this Leipzig centre-back, of course. I think potentially a deal like that now is something you've probably got to speed up potentially the process of doing that. And we talked about this when we talked about this Leipzig centre-back, obviously, in a few videos ago. And sort of that if you're playing a three at the back, which we do in a lot of games, of course, having only 4 centre-backs and maybe if Farke only trusts 3 centre-backs, you can't have that all season. Someone is going to get injured. And now we've seen Joe Rodon, even though he's obviously never gets injured, actually pick up an injury in today's game, which is really frustrating, by the way, because I did feel like, and look, I don't want to get into it too much, but I did feel a bit like the injuries were preventable. Obviously, I think Farke could have maybe took him after the first challenge, but what I mean by that is, I think the 2 challenges to get injured on annoyed me because I felt like it was just someone leaving one on us, and I just didn't think it was called for. I don't really like them sort of challenges. I know you could argue they're trying to block the sort of pass up the pitch, but it did feel like they were trying to leave one on him. And I just don't like, I never like them sort of tackles. I think sometimes you can try for a good tackle, try and win the ball, and miss the ball and hit the man. When you're leaving it on players sometimes, I didn't like that, I've got to be honest. And I felt that was annoying that we've now lost Rodon from 2 challenges, in my opinion, that seemed seemed like they didn't need to be made by the Sunderland players in that sense. I don't know. That was my feeling on it. But as I said, we've now got to deal with that. And I said, I think now when you go into the January transfer window, obviously we've talked about a backup for Goodmanson as being a sort of second priority. Maybe a new centre back that fits obviously the profile of what we want. Tall, physical centre back. He's maybe going to be the second priority, or maybe even first priority now, and it's been sort of bumped up the timeline because I think you've obviously got to adapt to sort of what the on-field decision is. And I know people are saying in the chat already, I can see it, that Rodon's maybe out for a month. I actually wonder if it could be longer, if I'm being honest. I think there is the way that ankle bent. If it's just swollen and if it's just bruised, then that's fantastic. I think that's best. I think best case outcome, he's probably out and he's going to be back for the Fulham game, which is after the Derby game. I think that's best case scenario. I think most likely he's going to be out for longer because when you twist an ankle like that, you end up doing all sorts of ligament damage to your ankle. And if you start doing ligament damage to your ankle, you're talking months rather than weeks. And I think we'll be lucky to have him back for the Fulham game. And if someone said to me, you can have him back straight for that Fulham game, I'd take it in a heartbeat. I think that would be. I think that'd be lucky, to be honest. So fingers crossed with Rodon. But I'm expecting maybe a bit longer term than we're saying. But I'm hoping the scans are not what I think they might be. But I'm slightly worried with that. Richard says, Justin can play in a back three. He can play in a back three. Oh, you said can Justin play in a back three? He can play in a back three, and he's playing in a back three for England, and he's also played in a back three for Leicester. The difference is, though, in terms of Justin as a profile of centre-back, he's not the same sort of profile of centre-back as Joe Rodon is. Maybe he could do the role that we did against the Crystal Palace game, where he was in a back five in possession, Rodon, and then out of possession, or in possession we're in a back four, and out of possession we're in a back five, like we talked about, and he could play that right back role. I think that would suit Justin down to the ground, actually. But we'd lose the physicality of Rodon. We'd lose the aerial threat of Rodon. He's scored 2 goals this season. He's a handful in the box. We would lose that with Justin. Whereas I think Bornau, probably in terms of a profile, is a closer comparison. But again, this is why I think Leeds United potentially need to explore the market. And as I said, if Daniel Farke is at no point going to use Bornau, then we might as well get rid of him because we need players that are actually going to be used by the manager. And if he's not going to be used, there's no point in wasting up a team shirt, and we might as well move him on and bring someone in that he actually will use. And I would question that. If he's not going to use Bornau under any circumstance, why do we buy him in the summer? I don't really get that. Better the devil, for me. So yeah, Gruev. Yeah, potentially Gruev. Potentially. We need heart in that in that three, in my opinion, Richard. Yeah, I agree, Jack. I do think that's a problem. In a three, fullbacks can play in that system. They can. It's just about when we talk about the benefit of Leeds United in the back five, a lot of the benefit has come from Leeds United being dominant on set pieces and having that extra third centre back who obviously will be naturally good in the air. You put Justin in, you instantly remove that. But I know what you mean. In terms of in terms of can it work and can Justin play in there? Yes, he could. But I'd probably he's not the same sort of profile. Is my camera gone funny? I don't know. No, it seems like it's fine. We'll lose the hat and set pieces. Yeah, exactly. The other thing I wanted to talk a bit about as well, the camera, by the way, does sort itself. One thing I wanted to talk about as well is the impact of DCL, because DCL has now turned into me for potentially the most important player in the team. I think he is absolutely influential, and I can't really remember a striker we've had. I know Bamford obviously scored 17 goals in that first season in the Prem, but obviously he wasn't on a run like this at any point in that season. Yes, he had good periods in that season, but he wasn't on a really good run. Yeah, apologies about that. I don't know what happened with my camera, but he wasn't really on the run that we've seen on DCL. And I must admit, I think fundamentally one of the main components of why Leeds United have turned around the form is we've got a striker scoring goals. I think it's absolutely massive. And I think if you're West Ham or you're even Forest or any of them teams in the bottom three, say if it was the other way around, you're looking at it going, I don't know, Callum Wilson scored sort of 6 in 7 or whoever you want, or 7 in 6, should I say. I think you'd be looking at that going, I'm really concerned. Because when we look at sort of the components of being relegated, not scoring enough goals is always in there, and strikers not scoring goals is always paramount in that. And as I said, the fact that we've now got a goal scoring Calvert-Lewin, if you can keep him fit, it is such a positive for this Leeds United team, and I think it's breeded confidence throughout the rest of the team, because when you know you're always in a game because you've got a number 9 that can score at any moment and feel like he's going to score every chance he gets, I think that massively breeds through into the rest of the team. It's one of the most important positions on the pitch, number 9. The spine of your team is always invaluable to how successful a football club is, and we've got a really nice spine at this moment, and DCL heading up the top of that it is really fantastic. And as I said, I don't think we can understate the importance of having someone scoring goals. Again, and he said, I think he did an interview after, in fact, I watched it, and he talked about that he sort of feels like he's in the right place at the thing, and he almost can't do anything wrong at the moment. And when I watch Calvert-Lewin, I feel that. I feel like he can't do anything wrong. Like, he takes a touch in the first half, Biol plays a ball into the box, he sort of does this flick thing, and it goes perfectly to Aronson. And that is an unbelievably hard skill to do. And I think that sort of backs up what I'm saying about Calvert in terms of it feels like everything he touches turns into gold at the moment. And as I said, it's just so vital for a team. It really is. There's no coincidence that Leeds started scoring goals and Leeds United have started turning games around and started winning games. There is no coincidence to that at all. And also, I think there's no coincidence as well that Ethan Ampadu has got much better and this team has got much better as well. Ethan Ampadu has been brilliant since that Chelsea game in every single game, and I think you've seen again when you've got your leaders in the team and you argue best players in the team playing well. Again, huge positive. And Ampadu's sort of performances at this moment, DCL's performance at this moment, and Stach as well, who I'm going to talk about as well, his performance at the moment, when they're all playing so well, which they are at the moment, again, so important when your spine's playing well. And they all deserve massive credit. And I'm going to do it in sort of a shout out to Stach individually, actually, because he's someone that I probably got wrong in terms of when Stach came in. He obviously suffered, I think he did break his rib or something, and he had a few other injuries, and he was in a bit of a sort of sorry state to start with, and I was questioning the signing, thinking he wasn't even our best midfield 3. Stach in the last few games, since the Chelsea game, has been outstanding in midfield, and actually I've seen all over Twitter today, a lot of rival fans and sort of fans of other clubs talking about sort of Stach would have been a really good signing for them, because he's a perfect Premier League midfield player, strong, physical, really long limbs, sort of tall, and as I said, but also got that moment of quality, like the goal that we score, that pass, the pass that he can provide for Aronson down the right hand side is wonderful, and it unlocks the whole game, that ball, and that was absolutely influential. And also he's a set piece. I know he's not in terms of, we don't want him arguably taking set pieces because he's so tall, but actually set piece delivery, in my opinion, is actually quite good. And obviously he adds free kicks into his locker as well. He scored 2 free kicks now this season, as he scored 3 or 4 goals as well. So he's been massively impressive since he's come back, and again he is so influential. Them 3 for us are enormous people. DCL, Stach, and Ampadu. If you can get them 3 playing to their best of their ability, which they are at this moment, you'll get good results. You really will. Because actually, in some games, like Bogle, for example, wasn't that brilliant today, in my personal opinion. He didn't have a particularly good game, but again, when the other players are playing so well and your spine's so strong like ours is at the moment, you can afford Tanaka to not have a particularly good game. You can afford a Bogle to not have a good game. It really improves the level of the team. It really does. It's against some of your guys' comments as well. I thought mine were funny then. Yeah, sorry about that. How long's Rodon out? We need a striker, left back, and centre back. They haven't done a scan yet, mate. But when they do a scan, we'll find it out. But I would imagine it's a while. Couldn't have asked for more from DCL. I wouldn't have had him on this many goals across the entire season if you asked me in the summer. Yeah, I agree, Jack. I'm shocked. But as I said, everything he's turning is like turning to gold at the moment. He's on one of them runs. The only concern I've slightly got, and this is not just about DCL, this is about the entire team, is we're playing at this moment full of confidence. As I said, all our important players are playing well, and we're playing full of confidence. And this will not continue. Like, in terms of, like, yes, we can breed in it and we're going to go through good runs in the season, but we'll also go through bad runs. And there will be points when Ampadu has a bad game, DCL might get injured or have a bad game himself, Stach might have a bad game, and we will struggle. And it's how we're going to react when we do struggle again. When we go through another rough patch, can we pick ourselves up again like we did in that Chelsea game and get a performance and get ourselves back out the dumps? Because it won't. I mean, we're 5 unbeaten at this moment. We're not gonna be unbeaten after another 5 more games. I'd be shocked with the games that we've got coming up if we're unbeaten in 5 games time. So eventually we're going to go through a bad run again. We're going to lose 2 on the bounce. We might even lose 3 on the bounce. And that's going to be where the next test is for Leeds United, when we're not full of confidence and when we need to grind out a result like we did against potentially in the Chelsea game. That's going to be the next step for Leeds United. And that's the only thing that's in the back of my head. If West Ham are in a bad form, if they turn their form into a good and they start winning a few games, Leeds United fall off a bit. We've got a hard run of games. Honestly, it could change quickly. And that's why I'm not, even though I'm as pleased as I've been all season about where Leeds United are, I'm still got this doubt in the back of my head because I know that they've got good players and I also know we're in a good moment. So everything's vamped up, if that makes sense. We're playing well at the moment. We're getting the best out of our players. Players are playing 8 out of 9 out of 10 performances, and they will have a 4 in a few weeks. Like they will play 4 out of 10 performance. And when that does, that's going to be where the trickiness starts. And again, with DCL, like he's scoring every week at the moment. He won't continue to score every week for the rest of the season, of course. When he goes through a dry spell and doesn't score in, say, 3 games, how is he then going to react again? Can we pull it out and get another run like we've just seen? That, again, that's going to be massively important. The movement is great for his goal. Knew exactly what he was going to do. Yeah, it was. The movement was bang on. And as I said, he talked about in his press conference, which I thought was really interesting afterwards, when he said that like he just knows where to be at this moment. It almost, and this, I think this is so fundamental with strikers. I think when strikers are playing well, they just play off instinct and they almost know where the ball's going to land. Like Haaland all the time. The ball's in the box and it just ends up falling at his feet and it's just pure instinct. And I think it's the exact same with Calvert-Lewin. He's exactly where he needs to be pretty much all the time at this moment. Like you look at the Crystal Palace game, the 2 goals is exactly where he needs to be for both of them. And that is what you get when it's going well for you. That is what you get. Definitely need a striker definitely in January. I agree. DCL hold-up plays awesome too. Yeah, his hold-up plays brilliant. And it was actually, I think it was as good today as it's been all season, to be honest. Talk of a West Ham sacking for Nuno for Bilic. Yeah, it's interesting actually, isn't it? Because, again, a few weeks ago, West Ham had just won 2 games on the trot against Newcastle and Burnley. Everyone was talking about this new manager bounce for Nuno and that Leeds United should have sacked Farke and got Nuno. Not looking so good now, is it? And that's not looking as good now. West Ham are as good as gone if they bring Bilic in, so hopefully that's true, Gavin. I've also seen them, by the way, I don't know if other people have seen this, and apologies, I'm a bit far up the chat here. I've also seen them linked with Harry Redknapp. Now, that's probably nonsense, but if they were to point in Harry Redknapp, who I think 78 years old now, that would be crazy to me. That would be crazy, because there's no way he can compete on a tactical level in the modern game, in my opinion. He's a good man manager, but no way in a tactical basis. He was there 2015 to 17, yeah, he was. Ampadu's one of our most important players. Aronson doesn't get the credit he deserves. Do you know what it is with Aronson? Do you know what it is? My honest feeling with Aronson is that, yes, he played well today. I don't think he was part of the match, if I'm being honest. I think Stach's unbelievably unlucky. I actually think DCL's unlucky, and I think Ampadu's definitely unlucky as well. I don't think he was man of the match. But I think because he's had so much negativity attached to Brendan Aronson, he's had such a bad time of it as Brendan, that anytime he does anything well and has a remotely decent game, because he's always like this level and always so crap, when he does a good game, everyone overinflates it. And I think it's the same when he does a bad game. But we don't, because he's this player that's talked about so much and he's probably shouldn't be in the team and probably hasn't got the quality to play in a Premier League outfit. As I said, when he plays remotely decently, everyone just goes, oh, he was unbelievable. And I don't think he was today, if I'm being honest. I thought he had a decent game, but I didn't think it was unbelievable. And I didn't think he was unbelievable in the Palace game either. But because his standards are so low, we almost set him a different bar to everybody else, which I get, but it's strange. Weird mic effects, Q drum break. Weird mic effects. I'm not sure about that. I'll have to listen. I'll listen to it back, mate, and see what I think. But do we need to upgrade Bogle? Says Gavin. No, I don't think we do. Bogle's had a really good season so far. A really good season. We've also got Justin there as well. If he does have a sort of dip in form, so I don't think we need. I don't think we need a new right back at all, actually. And Bogle had a bad game today. But one thing I will say, Bogle, and I've got this in my notes actually, is that he has played in a really advanced role for a few games now. He's played sort of, in the Crystal Palace game, for example, he played the right wing, which obviously Farke talked about in his press conference, but we obviously covered it before, straight after the game. That we basically played Rodon at right back and we played Bogle right wing. And I don't think he'd been doing much defending recently. And I think today, obviously got put by Dingra, who I thought was fantastic actually for Sunderland. And him and Xhaka probably, actually Dingra was probably their best player. I know he scored, but he was their best player in the all-round. I thought we didn't really have an answer for him on the right-hand side. And I don't think Bogle did that well against him. But I don't think it helped actually that he hadn't been doing much defending recently. I think he looked a bit sort of like,
shocked by the art of defending because he hadn't done it in a while. I don't think that helped him, to be honest. You can't end the video without giving a shout out to Aronson. One of the best games for us. Yeah, this is what I mean. I told you people would be on it with Aronson. As I said, it's not an Aronson slag off. Look, there's been so many more games we can slag off Aronson. It's just the case that I just think when he has a good game, he probably gets overdone based on the fact that he gets underdone other times when he does anything wrong, sort of thing. I bumped into James McAtee in Leeds today. I said you joining the Mighty Whites. He whispered March on together and disappeared. I've seen the James McAtee links. I'm not sure he's the person we need, to be honest. I like him as a player, but I'm not sure he's the person. Both Okafor and Bogle not great. Okafor been off it for a few games and Bogle's okay, but half the player, Gabby, says Scooby. The Okafor stuff, Okafor is a player that takes people on. He takes a lot of risks in games. He runs at people. He has a tendency to lose the ball, make the wrong decisions. But one thing he does do is that he is exciting to watch, and he's someone that can make something happen and bring a spark to a game. And I think when you take a lot of risks in games, you'll get a lot wrong naturally because it's a risky manoeuvre. But I like players that take risks. I think they open the game up, and I think on another day it can work for you. But I just think Okafor's been going through a patch at this moment where it's not been quite working for him. But that's what you get with them sort of players, in my opinion. There's talk of Everton wanting Bogle, sell and upgrade. I talked about selling Bogle, mate, a few days ago in a video when we covered the Bogle story, and I got hammered for it. But I still believe if you got good money for him, and he's a PSR player, it wouldn't be the worst deal in the world to move him on. Like, if you got 30 million plus of Bogle, we bought him for 5 million, you bank a load of money profit, it's quite a good player trade in my personal opinion. Not that I want to move some of our players on, I don't. But we can't just buy. There's got to be a buy and sell policy at some point. And I don't think, and it's not against Bogle. Actually, as I said, I really like him as a player and he's had a great season. But as I said, he's someone that he's a good stock at this moment and you could get some decent money for. So, yes, you don't want to sell your best players, but sometimes you've got to sell when the stock's high. And I think Bogle might be in that category, to be honest. Defo keep him unless you get silly money. Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people think about Bogle, to be honest. Based on today, it seems like Farke doesn't see Ball now as anything other than a late sub. I agree with that, VMG. I was actually, when he didn't bring him on, I was actually slightly concerned. I was like, oh no. But he actually got it right, didn't he? The 4-3 was the best thing. Because we were miles, actually, when Rodon went off, we were miles better in the game. Richard says, smash a like, folks. Thank you very much, Richard. Yeah, if you could, I always forget, but if you could drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff does massive up the channel. It boosts it and let other people to see, because I'm a small channel. I sort of need the boost, because then it goes, oh, this is a good video. I'll recommend it to people who haven't seen this channel before, and it really helps me. Obviously, if you're a big content creator, it's slightly different because it just recommends to people anyway. But when you're a small one like me, it's really helpful. So if you could, that would be brilliant. Darren says, enjoy the moment. The team is obviously focused and trained to put the ball to a spot. Yeah, I agree with that. I wouldn't anyone who's been playing regularly this season, and that includes Gruev. I'd sell Pro. I'd also sell Melier and Harrison, but they won't leave due to their massive wages. I agree with that. The reverse. But I'm not on about selling Bogle in January, by the way. In terms, if we're going to sell Bogle, it would have to be a summer thing. There's no way we can sell him in January. That would be absolutely ludicrous, and it won't happen anyway. The reverse is also true with Aronson. Why does anything remotely wrong and he gets no credit, so he gets slated? Yeah, I agree. You are right. Aronson is a player that will divide the Leeds United fan base, and he has done really since he's come back. So, as I said, anything he does completely wrong, he gets slated for because all the eyes are on him. And anytime he does anything right, he gets just like as if he's the best player ever. And usually he's not the best player ever, nor he's the worst, nor is he absolutely awful. There's been games when he's absolutely awful, so have other players, but he gets hyper focused on because he's not particularly a popular player, I don't think. I think you're harsh, Harrison. Well, Jack's proved my point there. Bogle's okay, but remember he's 1 yellow away from a ban, so was probably holding off. I think there's part of that, and I think Goodmanson had the same problem. I don't think Ampadu struggles with that somehow, though. Darren says, nobody said he was unbelievable. A good game, yes. He's a spoiler with his just energy. Yeah, I agree. Aronson, as I said, he's just a weird footballer, he really is. And he will constantly divide the fan base until he leaves, to be honest. Has Farke had an operating system upgrade? It's my only explanation to the change we've seen him. I'm totally surprised, Jonathan, by what's happened with Farke. I'm not surprised today. Today was Daniel Farke game to a principle. We played the way he wants to play. We played a 4-3-3. We dominated possession. We were sort of physical. We operated in a high press. We did all the Daniel Farke ball and all the Daniel Farke quote unquote principles in the game. So today didn't surprise me at all. What surprised me with Daniel Farke was the Crystal Palace game, where we're playing Rodon at right back. We're just chucking loads of long throws in the box. We're playing for corners. We're playing for set pieces. That is not Daniel Farke ball by trade. And that's the sort of development in his coaching style that we've seen over the last 5 games. In the ability to go against Crystal Palace, maybe it's not a game to try to dominate the ball. Maybe it's a game for set pieces. And then in the reverse side, against Sunderland, when Rodon goes down, no, this is a game actually we've got really good players in comparison to them. Not that they've got miles worse players. They've got Xhaka. They've got a load of quality. But what can happen is that we actually have got players in this game where we're not miles off in terms of quality, and we can almost go blow for blow with them, and we can play at our style. And I thought he got that right, and I thought it worked. And that's been the development in his game, to notice when to move away from his core principles, and then also to go back to his core principles when the right time presents itself. And he does deserve massive credit for that. I think you're being very harsh on Aronson. He was very good today. Give him the credit he deserves. Unlucky to not score, and his flick was nearly an assist. Yeah, well, this is my point about Aronson. That's the way he's going to be, back and forth. Sounds silly, I know, but we were better when Rodon went off. So back to a back 4. You're right, Gavin. As I said, but that's the game for today. So today was a really good game for a 4-3-3 because of AFCON, and because obviously Sunderland was still a newly promoted time, and when you take out sort of 5 of their sort of core players in the team, and Ballard was missing, we actually can sort of go blow for blow for them and input our quality on the game. So as I said, that's when we can see this sort of development in and sort of play the game we want to play. But that doesn't mean when we go to Anfield we should play a 4-back. That's when we need to go back. And that's when we need to sort of go back to the 5-back and sort of accept that we're not as good as Liverpool, and play and go back to a 5-3-2 and play with sort of 30% possession, the game that we played against Chelsea. And that's what we've got to now do. We can't just go the 4-3-3 is the best outcome or the 3-5-2 is the best outcome. It's matching the game to the style, and that's what we need to do. Smash a like if you admit that Brendan played well. Yeah, Aaron's had a good game today. That's earned me a like, then we'll take it. BMG says, Strauch had a period around the 70th minute where he just did everything right. He was actually had a decent game, but for a spell he was class. Yeah, I agree, actually. I thought Strauch, and I think Strauch actually, is like in the back 3 system, I think Biol's got a lot of praise. And again, I think Biol has been really, really good. I think his passing range, etc., is fantastic. And we've actually hadn't seen that until he went to a back 3. But I do also agree that I think Strauch and Rodon, both of them, have been pretty exceptional when we've gone to a back 3. We've talked about that's one of the main reasons for the back 3. It's because it makes our centre-backs, they suit the system. They suit the back 3 quite well in terms of they've got recovery pace, they're pretty good on the ball, and they can go into midfield with the ball. They can do quite a lot of things, can our centre-backs, especially Rodon and Strauch in terms of them wide areas, and that's a huge positive. Canel, you've won the 7 points Clay Cup. Yeah, well, I don't know who you support, mate, but if you're a West Ham fan, you know, you're 7 points behind. Big bit of a job on, I think, mate. Richard says, Biol isn't good in a back 4. He got dropped. I thought, yeah, I agree with you. I think he's been quite poor in a back 4, but I actually thought he did quite well today. But I also think when he was playing a back 4, he was sort of in and out of the team. He didn't really have a consistent run of games. And I think now he's had a consistent run of games, we're seeing a better Biol. It wasn't a surprise to me that when we went to a back 4 today, having got quite a few games under his belt, we saw a better Biol. That didn't surprise me, actually. It's the only cup we need to win this year, says Gavin. You're absolutely right, Gavin. I didn't expect Bornau to come on, but in hindsight, it was probably the right thing and probably too long left in the game to risk someone who is undercooked. Yeah. Well, as I said, the system change worked really well. And to be honest, truthfully, even if Rodon hadn't been injured, we weren't actually doing that well today in a 3-5-2. We probably should have changed to a 4-3 anyway. Aronson is looking stronger and staying on his feet better and difficult to shake off. Yeah, he still does a few things mad. Like he ran for the first goal, he ran away from the ball. Like it was a bad bit of play from Ampadu, in fairness, but Aronson just starts running randomly up the pitch, which didn't help us. If Rodon's out, he'll probably he might play Justin as the right side centre back. Thoughts? Yeah, we talked about it earlier a bit, so I don't want to go into too much detail about it. But I would play. Ideally, I would play ball now, but if we have to, then we can sort of play. Justin can play in a back three. We have a good enough squad. If the objective was to stay in the Premier League, I agree, Easy. I do agree with that. Me and you have always disagreed on sort of the level of the squad. I think you have always felt it's a bit better than I have, and you've always felt the manager's a bit worse than I do, and then vice versa. I've always felt the squad's a bit worse. The manager's probably a bit better than you think, but I agree with you that the squad's good enough to stay up. BMG Farke has said he's out until the FA Cup game at least. Yeah, I don't think he fully knows because he hasn't done a scan, but he will be out for a while. I think at times we played in the back three with Ampadu dropping in between BL and Strout. We have. I don't want to see Ampadu in a back three permanently, though. I don't think that's the solution because he offers so much in midfield. So I don't really want to see that. Darren says, I thought you were the better side throughout. I think it's 2 points dropped. Yeah. Do you know what it is? When we went 1-1 for between about the 45th minute and about probably the 70th to 75th minute, I thought we were by far the better team. I actually think there was only almost one team playing at that point. I think we were winning it back in midfield constantly and just running straight at you and causing Sunderland all sorts of problems. And I thought we were unlucky actually to not score the goal. A few sort of big blocks from Sunderland, and it didn't quite fall for us at times. It didn't quite fall for us. But in the same respect, I think the best teams score in that moment. Like I think if you're an Aston Villa, for example, like they did against Chelsea yesterday, or you're even a Brighton or someone of that calibre who's just the next step up over us. I know, obviously, Brighton are nowhere near as good as Villa, but teams of that are that level of calibre, I do genuinely think that they'd have probably gone on and won the game, but we're probably not quite there in our sort of development yet, in my opinion. Being serious, it all hangs on DCL avoids an ACL. The other option is to worry about is DCL will continue this streak. It's not all possible. Get the points while we can. That's what we have to do. Yeah, I agree. I said that earlier. I agree with that. Ampadu is an old-fashioned sweeper. Yes, he is. Okafor needs to step up his game big time. I'm a bit of a defender of Okafor, I must admit, because of the way he plays, he is someone that takes a lot of risks, as I said, and because of that, you're going to have good games and bad games, in my opinion. You are going to have good games and bad games. Anyway, I want to talk slightly about sort of where this all leaves us and where this leaves us in terms of the relegation battle. Because one thing that I will say, and it was something that I called for Leeds United to do maybe a few weeks ago now, is a few weeks ago, West Ham had started picking up some decent away points, like the Brighton one as an example. And I felt one of the issues that we had at that moment was we were always, I feel, going to be better at Ellen Road than they are at London Stadium. One fundamentally because London Stadium's not a track ground, it isn't a football ground, and you don't create a proper atmosphere. I don't think it's the West Ham's fans' fault because Upton Park was always bouncing. I think it is genuinely fundamentally because of the build of the stadium, and obviously they hate the stadium. So I always felt Ellen Road was going to be a huge advantage for us on West Ham. What the problem was earlier in the season, though, was that West Ham were picking up these odd points away from home, and we were basically just getting smacked every away game. And what Leeds United, I call for Leeds United to manage to, if we can match what West Ham are doing away from home, then we should be able to beat them because we should be able to do enough in our home games to overcome them in their home games, if that makes sense. And that's something that I've been really pleased at in this little run that we've done with these 2 away points away from home. We're not just now getting slapped away from home. Like, you watch us against Forest, you watch against Brighton, there was only one team in the game. We never looked like we were going to do anything in the game. Whereas now, we have got this away game strategy and we're playing much better away from home. And that was always going to be fundamental to Leeds United staying up because you just can't. Like, if you're losing every away game, which we basically were at one point, you're basically writing off 19 games of the season. And you just can't do that because you're just relying way too much on your own game. Because if you're writing off 19 games a season, you're probably then going to need maybe like 35 points out of your 19 home games, which is going on just shy of 2 points a game at home. And that's just not realistic. So you've got to chip in points away. And that's something that I'm really pleased at. Like, I'm almost more pleased with it today than I was against Crystal Palace. I always knew we could beat teams at this level at home. My question is, can we go to Sunderland and get points? Can we go to Brentford to get points? And that's what we've done. And that is impressive. And I'm pleased because that's something West Ham were doing and we weren't. And that's so important. But fundamentally, to sort of wrap up where we are, we've just got to get through West Ham's next 5 games and see where we're at. Because I still genuinely believe, I don't think Forest are going to go down for life, mate. I watched them again against Man City. I thought they were unbelievably unlucky. I've watched them quite a few times. They've got far too much quality, in my opinion. They finished 7th last year in the Prem. They've spent another 200 million in the summer. They've got far too much quality. And they've got Sean Dyche manager. They won't go down, in my opinion. And I think if our hopes that they're going to finish below us, I think we're struggling. The benefit is we've got West Ham, and they're the team for me, if anyone, that could go down. They are the ones, and they're off it at the moment. And as I said, if we can get through these next 5 games that they've got, and they haven't made a massive dint on this 7 points that we've got on them, I think we're going to be in a fantastic position, because when these games are done, you can only play these games once. You can only play Brighton, Fulham's and West Wolves twice, obviously, and Forest at home, them home games once, and Sunderland at home once, which is obviously in that period as well. And if we can get through them games and we're still out of it, we're in a really good position. But the main milestone of all of them is that March 3rd. We play Sunderland at home on March 3rd, I believe it is. And that is the start of the final 10 games of the season. And our final 10 games are about as good as anybody else in the division. If you're in FPL at that point, you're probably going to be transferring Leeds players, because we've got something like Brentford at home, we've got Fulham at home. No, maybe we haven't got Fulham at home. We've got Brentford at home in that time. We've got Wolves at home. We've got Burnley at home. We've got Brighton at home, all in our last 10. And even our away games are not bad. We've got a fantastic last 10 games. And the only 2 teams we've played that are top 6 teams are Man United and Spurs. And they're obviously the worst 2 top 6 teams in the country at the moment, quite comfortably. So if we can get to March the 3rd, going into that Sunderland game, and we are not in the bottom 3, we should stay up, because we really should. Because with our home games in the last 10, in our games in our last 10 as a blanket statement, we should easily be getting sort of 14, 15 points in our last 10 games. So we really should stay up if we get to that point. And more importantly, if we can see in our next, I think, is it 20 not in our next 11 games, it's something like that. If we can get to them last 10 games on around 30 points, and we only need 10 from our last 10, again, we should do it. We really, really should do it. So as I said, that's where I'm more optimistic than confident. Because as I said, if we can get to there, in terms of what West Ham have got in their last 10 in comparison to us, it's night and day. It's absolutely night and day. So as I said, get to that point, ideally March the 3rd, but let's get through these first 5 first. And not be in the bottom 3, and we can definitely stay up then. If we can get to that point, not in the bottom 3, I will be seriously confident, because yes, West Ham can be, like, I think they've got Arsenal, a few other teams in the last 10 games, but we can get there. We're in a great stead. And the other thing as well to mention is, and this is not just last 10 games, but we've still got loads of winnable home games left. Like, if you look through the league, we've still got Wolves to play at home, which should be 3 points, really. We've got Burnley to play at home, which should be 3 points. Forest to play at home. We've got Fulham to play at home. We've got Brighton to play at home. We've got Sunderland to play at home. With all these games at home still to play, these 6 home games, them 6 home games, and I think there's another one as well, I can't think off the top of my head. We should be getting some serious points in them home games. They're the best games of the season for Leeds, and we've got them all to play. So that is a huge positive. We're out of the bottom 3, we're comfortably out of the bottom 3, and we've still got mainly pretty much all the bottom half still to play at home. And as I said, these are positives, because if we can get through these West Ham games when they've got all these bottom teams at home, then we're really in a good position. We really are, and that's where I'll start to get really excited with it all. To be fair, and as I say, I can see in the chat now, Bournemouth, and I agree with you on Bournemouth. They're the only other ones that, for me, they've got much more chance of going down than Brentford at home as well. Yeah, did I not mention Brentford at home, but they're another one. But Bournemouth are the other ones, aren't they? They're the other ones. I don't think they'll quite be bad enough to go down, if I'm being honest. I don't think they will. I know they're on an absolutely abhorrent run. I know they're losing Semenyo in January. I still think without Semenyo, they'll have enough. But I do think they'll be in it. And I do think they'll be in it. And I think they'll finish below Forest as well. So Bournemouth could go down. I completely agree with you in the chat. I don't disagree with that at all. But I think it's West Ham. They're the ones every week. They're the ones I look at, and they're the ones in my head. I'm going, we need to finish up. We need to finish above them. Anyway, I'll get into some of your guys' comments, and then we'll probably wrap it up for today. They had 2 clear chances. If it could have been 3-1 before half time. Take the point, because I don't want to read that bit. Yeah, take the positive, basically. Yeah. like I said, good point, but they were there for taking today. I'm going to get more onto what we've just been talking about as opposed to that. If we can pick up a bunch of away draws, say 8 or +1, 2 wins away, our home form should be enough to keep us up. Yeah, that's where I'm at. What you said about Forest is too good to go down is true. A lot of teams. There could be 4 or 5 teams scrapping for the last relegation spot. I get what people are saying about Forest, and fundamentally they are where they are for a reason. I agree with all that. I do agree with that, and I can concur with it. But as I said, if we were relying on Forest to get relegated and finish below us, I am seriously not happy about that because they are not. I honestly would be very surprised if we finish above them. I really would. They've got so much quality, Forest. They really have, and they've got much more quality than the majority of the bottom teams. I think Bournemouth could easily get dragged into this relegation battle, only 2 points ahead of us. I agree, Tom. I agree. Someone's saying Bournemouth as well. Yeah, I definitely agree. Bournemouth, no wins in 9. A lot of you are saying Bournemouth. So yeah, I agree. I think Bournemouth are the only other ones. But for me, as I said, it's West Ham. Every week it's West Ham. I looked at West Ham yesterday. When Jimenez scored, I was absolutely buzzing. They're the ones because I watched them and they're terrible. West Ham when I watch them, they look awful, and they don't pass the eye test. West Ham, so I think they're the ones. If it's going to be anyone, I think it'll be them. Dash is overrated. Forest still in it for me. Fundamentally, Gavin, you're not out of it until you're out of it. So I agree with you in terms of a points basis completely. I think on a points level, of course they're in it. But as I said, if we're relying on them to get relegated over us, I'm seriously quite worried. How many points do you think keeps us up this season? Personally, for me, it's 36, says Tom. Oh, I'm not sure. I still want 40. I feel like 40 probably will just be enough. I thought maybe it was going to be high this year, but West Ham have sort of proved me wrong in terms of where they're at points-wise. They're quite, obviously, really low at this moment and nowhere near sort of a 40-point gap in terms of after 19 games. So, yeah, I'd be aiming for 40. But as I said, for me, then, if you're aiming for 40, we're on 20 now. With 10 left, we want to be only going for about 10, really. So if you can get to 30 with 10 left, as I said, that should put us in a good spot. 38 for me, says Gavin. Is Ampadu still on the yellow? If so, don't want him missing Man United game like Rodon, so maybe bench him at Liverpool. I'd play Bornau in a back three because of his aerial threat. Hammers won't touch 40, says Jack. Interesting, yeah. With the Ampadu, Bogle and Goodmanson, because they're all in the same situation, yes, they're all a yellow away. And I think it's probably not one for this particular show because we've gone on long enough now. But this week, when I talk about the Liverpool game and sort of the expectations in that game, we will talk about the idea of potentially rotating the team. People won't like that because I think obviously Liverpool are vulnerable and they only scraped past Wolves at the weekend. They've been scraping it quite recently. They were awful against Spurs in my opinion. Scraped that game, and obviously we've recently drawn with them as well. Man United is definitely the more winnable game of the two, of course, and I think no one in the chat will disagree with me on that. And I wonder if it's worth. I don't know. It's a conversation. When we get to it, we'll talk about the idea of maybe resting a few for that game. I'm not. I could be torn either way, but I'll have more of a defined opinion when we get to it, I'd have thought. Hammers won't touch 40, I've read that one. But yeah, anyway, thanks all for watching, as always. Tomorrow we'll be back. There's a few rumours going around at this moment. I think there's McAtee going on. So we'll talk about all that tomorrow at 8 p.m. So definitely stay around for that. It should be a really good show. And then obviously we'll mention Liverpool this week and talk about the Liverpool game coming up, and we should do that like we've just mentioned there. But yeah, thanks for all the support recently, and Leeds United are in a really good spot at this moment. And truthfully, I didn't expect we'd be here. I really didn't. I actually read the other day that this is the most gap. So obviously we're now 7 points ahead of West Ham, but this was the biggest gap from the 18th spot to 17th spot there has been. Sitting on record, I think, in the Premier League so far at the Christmas period, which I thought was massive, which I also didn't expect at all, because I'd imagine even Leicester would have had a bigger gap last year, but they obviously didn't. So yeah, I am. That's got something to be optimistic about, surely, as well. Liverpool fans weren't happy with their performance against Wolves. No, they were. I did see that. They've also got a really sort of weakened squad at the moment. They've got loads of injuries. So yeah, as I said, that's why I'm tossing and turning. If it was Liverpool of a few years ago, where I thought we were going to go down there and probably lose 3 or 4, then I think the rotation idea makes more sense. But Sunderland went there, got a point recently. I think you can get Liverpool. I think they are still very vulnerable. So it is a game where I don't think it's a write-off game. I think it's a game we could get points in. So that's why I'm tossing and turning over. We should rotate, really. Anyway, but thanks all for watching. As I said, we'll cover all that in the week, and it'll be a new show again tomorrow. But I'll see you then, everybody. Bye for now. I've really enjoyed the show tonight, but bye for now. And yeah, if you could drop like, subscribe, all that good stuff does help the channel. See you all, everybody. Have a good evening. Bye for now.